Hi, everyone. So I'm going to walk you through the writing of the research proposal. This is something we'll work on for the week after the break, the week of April 10th through 14th. And in class, we'll workshop and develop the proposal. You need to come in, though, with a working rough draft. You don't need to write the whole thing, at least 300 words. And please note that you might bring that in a rough outline form. This doesn't need to be a polished draft. You just need to have that basic idea of a research question, okay, in mind, a research conversation, search strategy, and research challenges. And you will also have found at that point, you'll have found some sources. You'll be working with sources already. Okay, so we're emphasizing process here, process. And the end outcome of this process for Unit 2 will be writing a full research proposal. You can see here on the side of this doc here that the overview contains a lot of information about what's going on and how to go about your work, and then two models. One is an outline model where I number each paragraph and highlight certain points. The full written model is what you'll turn in at the end, and we'll do this in MLA style, right, with an MLA header, right, a working title, and then paragraphs, right. And you can see here it's a two-page proposal, MLA style. Um, that will be what we shoot for the end of for the end of the week of the 14th, so due on the 14th. Now, what I'm going to do with you next week too will be to continue to think about developing your works cited list and annotating some key sources. All right, so if you've begun to do that work, that's great. If you simply have a more kind of informal resource list as you collect sources, that's also fine. In next week in class, we'll work on putting this all together. Next week, I should say, the week after break. So now let me walk you through this. There might be points of confusion otherwise. So first, this model that we'll be looking at, all right, down here is obviously, you know, on a topic that we are not really, I don't think anybody is writing about this in our class, mindfulness meditation. This is a topic that we explored in a previous writings inquiry class. But the content is not the point, all right? The content is not the point. Rather, thinking about the form and style and writing for a formal academic audience, right? Not a general audience as we previously did, but a formal academic audience, and then doing four key things, right? Developing a research question, recognizing that there's a research conversation that we will be joining, that you will be first learning about by doing background research and then developing a specific question that will go more deeply into a particular aspect of that larger conversation. And along the way, you'll be developing your search strategy, right? So we started out with a background search about a general topic with our reference librarian, Vanessa. Um, and she helped us, do that background search in Credo, and then we went deeper into library databases, right? So, what we're looking for here is a sense of what your keywords are, how you will find sources, um, and, and given that we're also thinking about Shanghai as a site of inquiry, right? Whether you actually write about something in Shanghai or you find some kind of source, maybe within or outside of the university, some person or event that you can be aware of that's relevant to your topic and that you can perhaps um, bring into your paper, you want to think about that too. And how are you tying this into Shanghai as a site of research and inquiry? Finally, you'll be thinking about research challenges, and given that this is going to be, in the end, a fairly short paper, right? An 8 to 10 page essay in MLA style. You have to keep things focused, right? And so when you're thinking about challenges, that's one of them. And this is why we'll want to really, really get focused on a specific aspect of a larger topic, so that you don't remain at an overly general level, simply writing a kind of report on a topic, but rather going further with it. Right? And the research question is the tool that you develop to help you do that. And then your thesis statement is the tool that you use to help show your reader what you've discovered, what you how you think about the topic, what your argument is, right? How you want us to understand and see what you're showing us. One, of course, important set of sources that we'll be using will be, for just background and helping us develop this, will be chapters from Rules for Writers, in particular, this section, chapter 51, from part 9, research, right? Thinking like a researcher. And this will take us all the way through to write a research proposal. And then many of you, too, because Shanghai is a site of inquiry, will be potentially conducting field research, right? Going out into the city, for example. And so we have a little bit of support material here to help us think about that. One quick note on Rules for Writers as an ebook. Sometimes if you haven't logged in recently and you go to open your ebook, you might get an error message. And if you get that, maybe close it, refresh, try the link again, try logging in. I've encountered that error a few times, and it just seems to be a kind of glitch. So be aware of that. Now, the final proposal that is due on April 14th will be about 600 or 800 words, not very long, right? And again, we've got that full model down here, right? And you can see it's 2 pages in the end. And I'm not sure how many words it is, but it's about, let's take a look. Okay, 668 words. Okay, so that's about the length. Um, Now, what you need for next week, right? If you're in Monday, Wednesday, on Monday, if you're Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, right, is just this rough draft of about 300 words. And how you develop that at that stage, I'm going to leave up to you. I'm not going to tell you precisely how to do that. The idea is that you're starting to develop a proposal. You're looking at the models here to guide you, but the most important thing is that you bring in material that we can work with in class, okay? So moving on to the process now. Like I say, we'll be working to develop these proposals in class next week or the week after break. All right, and here you can see I've given you a number of guidelines on form and sources. This down here will give you an overview of the form, MLA style, right? An academic format. We're using works cited. And here, because this is not your final research project, you'll just be citing sources that you use in your proposal. And ideally, you'll be keeping a separate reference list to continuously sort of keep track of sources that you encounter. And in your research, you might find things that you say, yeah, this could be useful. I'm not sure, but I want to make sure I have it in my reference list. And later, if I do use it, then I'll put it in my works cited page. All right. We are going to work with one peer-reviewed academic journal article. At this point, we'll call it a possible source, but in the end, you need to work with one academic journal article. We'll review this a little bit more in class next week. How do we know if something is peer-reviewed? What does that mean? The idea here is to recognize this specific type or genre of article, the academic journal article, and the importance of peer review in helping to guarantee that it's a strong, credible source for academic work. So that's one thing, right? You can begin to annotate it. Um, an annotation is summarizing something in a particular way, right? So we'll work on that next week, but if you want to work ahead, you can. Okay. So I've added a little bit of extra information here. With annotating a source, we'll be working on this after the break because if you're going to annotate a source, you really want to feel that it's a strong source that you're highly likely or certain to use. Um, and you might already have that kind of source. And if you want to work ahead, here is a guide from Rules for Writers on source annotation that we'll be using. But again, at this point, it's not necessary that you annotate those sources yet. Okay, but we will be doing a bit of source annotation, practicing this, right? Practicing that summarizing and evaluation of a source as part of our work moving forward. But for now, if you don't get that far, that's okay. We'll work on that when we get back from break. You're also looking for two exhibition or exhibit sources. We'll talk more about this after break too, the differences between, say, a source that you use as an exhibition to illustrate a problem or a subject or a topic, and then a background source that you use to provide more general background, and then a source that you might use for your argument. And so we'll look at those types of sources moving forward. So again, this paragraph explains, what that means, sources that can help you represent your subject. So start to gather sources that can help you do that. Next week or the week after break, I keep saying next week, the week after break, we'll work to develop our sense of source evaluation a bit more. Anyway, what comes after the proposal, which is due again April 14th? Well, you will have done a lot of work toward understanding an area of inquiry or topic, background information and sources that you can use, a line of inquiry, a research question where you try to find some part of that topic that you are curious about and can do some real more focused research in, and you're doing that research to help you write that essay, which we'll be moving forward to do for the last part of our class. That will be an 8 to 10 page essay due at the end of the semester. So now, that's the overview. Now let's look at the two models that I am sharing with you here. So one is an outline model and the other is the full proposal. What you'll notice is that the only difference here is that the outline model is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I've outlined, and essentially each one of these numbers is a sentence. Some of them are kind of long sentences. Um, so, don't feel like you have to try to write such a long sentence. Some of them are shorter. The idea here, though, is to to highlight how we use our sentences to build paragraphs and then transition from one part of our proposal to another, right? So the first thing we'll be doing is establishing background information. And you might use some background sources here. So background sources, just give that background information. Then we'll transition to the research conversation and a further development of the topic. Then transition to a proposed line of inquiry and or a research question. Right, so we'll just call that your research question. And again, next week we'll talk more about things like writing strong transitions and so forth in our upcoming upcoming classes, right? And then we'll move on to think about search strategy and challenges, right? So that's where we really say, okay, we're writing a short essay. We have to provide background, context, and then, begin to develop an argument focused on a specific aspect of this larger issue we're exploring. It's quite a challenge, okay? So in this first, in this first outline model, I number the sentences, and then, we're looking at sort of each paragraph, right, where we get clear transitions to one paragraph, to another paragraph, to another paragraph, okay. And down here, it's the same content, it's just put into a straight, a fluid writing situation, right? So that's 4, 5, 6 paragraphs. You don't have to write 6 paragraphs. You might write 5. You might write 8. But you do need to think very carefully about, what your paragraphs are doing. Providing background, in this case, on a subject, and then moving into the sort of sharing the research conversation. What are some of the issues in this area that are maybe controversial? And then presenting your research question, right? Based on what you've been discovering in your research, right? And then noting that, you've got challenges, you need a search strategy, right? How are you going to focus? How are you going to think about finding sources you haven't found yet or finding better sources? And then challenges, right? Because as you become aware of the challenges, that can help you then further focus or refocus to avoid problems that could become very hard to manage at the end of your research and writing process. Okay? So that's the basic idea. Now, I'm not going to go through this here. My presumption is that you'll be able to read this and recognize and understand it as a proposal without knowing a lot about the topic, which is fine. And I think appropriate for our class, given that all of you might be and are writing on a very wide range of topics. And so we do want to think about how do we address an audience in a way that makes a topic clear, even if it's something that our audience might not be that familiar with, right? So we'll work with this moving forward. And if it feels difficult or challenging now, that's okay. Do your best to develop that initial body of research, right? Get that kind of rough draft together. You can think a little bit in terms of the outline model. You might just start establishing background on your topic. It's a good place to start. And then recognizing that, yeah, I see some kinds of conversations, some maybe controversies or disagreements or different ways of looking at things that I can identify. And that's where you then say, okay, I can start to think about my own question that will focus my research moving forward. If that's as far as you get, by the class after our break is over, that's great. That's a good place to be. If you get further, all the better. All right? That's all, and I look forward to seeing you all after break. I'll be sharing another video with you on revising your posts as well, so stay tuned.